to the Inspiration Summit. We're here to help you to activate, enliven, and inspire you towards your highest growth potential. This is the period of light, of creation and birth. What is it you are birthing out into the world? So today, as a guest, I have my dear friend and longtime colleague, Veronica Monet. Veronica Monet is an internationally acclaimed sexual and spiritual empowerment change agent. Veronica guides her clients to fully realize their unique spiritual, emotional, relational, and erotic path. As a relationship coach, sexologist, and anger specialist, she combines her extensive education with deep empathy derived from personal experience. Personally overcoming incest, rape, violence, and abuse, she has not just survived, but she thrives. Veronica is committed to helping others on their own personal empowerment and realize the freedom and joy that is their own birthright. Veronica invites you to join her in the shame-free zone. Here you will discover her books, Sex Secrets of Escorts, and the soon-to-be published Love, Lust, and Romance in the wake of the Me Too movement, as well as her game-changing Exquisite Partnership Formula, a program designed to turn conflict into connection and sex that gets better with each passing year. So with no further ado, I introduce you to Veronica Monet. And by the way, in this conversation's completely organic. We're just going to ride the wave of whatever feels true and real to us to share, and with the intention to help and inspire and empower you. So let's.
Beautiful.
You did mention to me that you interviewed a man who committed date rape, right?
Yes, I did.
Would you like to just?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Such a brave man. His name is Damian Jones. And I'm just so enthralled with the fact that he's being public about this. And I want to be clear, Shara, that what he did is kind of in this quote unquote gray zone for some people, not those who are woke and are like really get the consent issue, but like the vast majority of men and women who are kind of like, that's confusing to me.
Yeah.
So he was in a situation where the woman and he had been sexually active in that moment, but then she fell asleep during sex and he decided to proceed. And they hadn't actually consummated with sexual intercourse. So she felt violated. The play party that they were at said, that violates our consent laws or rules. And he really took it seriously and went on a whole soul searching journey, trying to get more connected to himself and really diving into rape culture and men's attitudes about their sense of entitlement to a woman's body and even like where that originates. So I found the conversation, we went on for over an hour, really intriguing. And I'm a date rape survivor. And the thing is that when I think about date rape, the term is kind of a misnomer. We really don't really want to have that term because it's almost like we're trying to say, well, there's marital rape, there's date rape, somehow or another, it's not as bad. It can be every bit as traumatic. But I'm looking back at this first time that my consent was violated and I was in college. I really do not think that boy who raped me would consider it rape. I was attracted to him. I was in his dorm room. When he kissed me, it was like a dream come true. I was so excited. And then he went into his male entitlement, which was basically, well, she really has the hots for me, so I'm just going to do whatever I want to her. And because I'm an incest survivor, that's what I thought. For a minute, I'm going to just indulge that misconception that I had. I thought it was because I was an incest survivor that I didn't know how to find my voice in that moment. I just froze. I froze. He did whatever he wanted to me. I became incredibly obedient. And then he sent me on my way when he was done treating me like a human toilet. And I felt completely humiliated and disgusted. And I never wanted to see him or speak to him again. And I didn't even feel like I had the right to be upset with him. You know, I was 18. I thought, oh, I did this to myself. Shame on me. I shouldn't have gone to his room. So anyway, next time I saw him, he's like waving at me as he drives by in his little red convertible, and I'm just wanting to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a long time to unpack that. So what I know is that there's a lot of instances where the sexual dynamic between heterosexual men and women is not spoken. It's not talked about in a way that's really open. There's like all these assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just horrified 3 years ago. New York Times read an article that said, when saying yes is easier than saying no.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I have seen so much of this in my practice now,
Mm-hmm.
with women who are been married to the same man for 20 years, or living in the same household with the same man for 10 years, you know, and they're having sex that they absolutely hate, but they figure, well, it'll be over real soon. And, he's a good man and he means well, and oh, well.
Yeah, I can totally relate to so much of what you just said. In fact, let me just jump in here. And I'm sure as you're talking, so many women who are listening to this could completely say, me too, me too. I had that same feeling. We feel so isolated when we're in the experience, but especially when we're in our teens, which I had a very similar experience. We don't have the voice. We're not taught to express ourselves.
No.
I think it's just in our physiology to freeze. And so as we become older women, that we're learning how to speak our needs and how to communicate. So for some of us, it's easier than others. It's actually, a lot of people don't know this about me, but I spent like a whole decade as a student and then as a teacher of this work of learning about sensuality and learning how to communicate your needs and what you want. And in the end, that does really build a lot of confidence. But I also want to interject one thought you're talking about as Damien, as we're describing Damien,
Yeah.
the perpetrator. The thing is, it's so easy for us as a society to judge him and be like, he did this, and all of a sudden we'll be branded. And also, when what people think one thing about a person, it's so easy to influence other people's thoughts. So then, he's a scapegoat.
Right.
However, probably all of us have been in that, not that exact experience, but the experience of being the persecutor or the scapegoat, or we're just the opposite. So, it takes like the perpetrator and then you have the victim. You can't have a perpetrator without the victim. So they go hand in hand, and they're usually, you probably have a lot more to say about this, but they're usually like a magnet towards one another. It's in
Well,
our, go ahead.
I do have a lot that I want to say about that. I want to back up for just a minute and
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
say about when I froze and I could not say no and I could not resist that first rape when I was 18. That applies to about 97% of all sexual assaults, that women freeze in that way. And there's actually a term for it, tonal immobility.
There's
So,
also the polyvagal theory,
yeah,
which talks about that. There's the freeze and the parasympathetic nervous system.
yes,
Literally, you're just
absolutely. But
freeze.
I think this whole thing about tonal immobility is so important because so many women have thought, why didn't I do something?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't I say something? And it's important to know that this is a reflex
Mm-hmm.
that you don't have a lot of control over.
I agree.
And it's often what happens when the organism, in this case a woman,
Uh-huh.
but it could be anybody of any gender who just happens to be smaller than the other person. So there's this sense of phrasing and not doing anything is actually going to preserve my life. And
Yeah.
in fact, um, I know for a fact that when it comes to a violent rapist, that's true. The thing is that unfortunately, it oftentimes kicks in these situations where if we had spoken up, maybe we could have deterred the person who was doing this to us. I'm not saying that that's true. I have a feeling that if I had said something to this guy in the college dormitory, um, we probably would have gotten in an argument.
Yeah. Like
And,
now, like
and
this would never happen to you now because you're so stand up for
yeah,
your needs and
yeah,
what you need.
right. I don't think it was violent, but years and years later, I ran into a serial rapist, and you know what? Not doing anything was the right thing to do because a girl who was raped by him 3 weeks later. He stabbed her in the face for fighting back.
What?
Oh yeah,
You had an encounter with this person?
I did.
Wow.
I did. I spent 3 years working with Oakland PD to try to finally get them to take my deposition. That was another story. Um, so I have some experience with different types of rapists. This is one of the things I want to talk about when we're talking about perpetrators and victims.
Mm-hmm.
My sweet spot is working with couples where I work with their perpetrations and their victimizations all the time. And
Okay.
these are people that are in love with each other, want to have babies and live together forever and ever. And they're hurting each other and they're also getting hurt. And so I often try to point out to them that, we can, it's a whole. Perpetrator victim's a whole. So if you stop being the perpetrator, sometimes you'll become the victim, because then the victim starts perpetrating. If that's the only model, and it's the dominant one in this patriarchal system, because it's always top down, it's always hierarchical, it's always somebody has to lose and somebody wins. When we're living in that kind of a system, then we bring that into our intimate relationships too. And we have these power struggles that wind up victimizing or getting victimized.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm working with sexuality, I'm wanting to help people understand that power dynamic. They're bringing it into their bed as well, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, it's very frustrating when I'm working with one member of the partnership who actually thinks that sex is a transaction.
Mm-hmm.
I did this for you, so then you should do this for me.
Tit for tat. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. So anyway, I wanted to, tonal immobility is a really important thing for women to know about, so that we can start letting ourselves feel less guilt or shame or embarrassment.
Yeah.
It's like, guess what? The other 97% of the women didn't do anything either, and it's still right. Okay, but if we're looking at it from some of these men's perspective, where they may not, I asked Damien, did you know you were raping her at the time? And he said no.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really common,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're talking about the serial rapist that I've unfortunately.
I get it. I get the difference. I get that he had no ill will.
No, but we keep throwing everybody into the same pit here. It's like you've perpetrated, so now you're all the same, and it's not true.
I get it.
I've never perpetrated sexually, but I've perpetrated a domestic violence in my former marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Am I a perpetrator or a victim? Mm-hmm. Am I a rape survivor, or am I? And my husband, we used to get into mutual combat. He also perpetrated against me. Mm-hmm. How do you sort that out? Mm-hmm. How do you start just seeing people as people? The way that I think is a way forward is for us to start talking about perpetrations instead of perpetrators. Mm-hmm. So we can stop putting a label on people and start looking at the behavior. We don't want people who have made mistakes to identify with their mistakes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want to see myself as just the person who hit my husband. I want to see myself as a human being who grew up in a dysfunctional, violent home and was in a violent marriage. And I've learned not to be violent. That is a huge win. But I have to start identifying with somebody who is nonviolent in order to do that.
I think we're all right now, especially in this coronavirus period, building our consciousness and becoming more aware of all the ways we've been a bad person. Like, all of us in some way have hurt another person. We have, in some definition of the word bad, been cruel or committed harm in some way to another person. I mean, would you say pretty much everybody has that element to them?
Oh, here's a discouraging figure for you. About 75% of the women who go into domestic violence shelters with their children hit their children.
Yeah.
So yeah, when we not only when we call people victims, we disempower them, but we also don't see their whole humanity. We don't give them an opportunity. I look at domestic violence as a family disease. So
Generational. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, but if we just say, okay, that person perpetrated, so they're bad, we'll remove them from the equation. We haven't really solved anything because it's actually rare. I'm not saying it's unheard of, but it's just rare that people who are in that environment, there's just one who's like, quote unquote, innocent and just is getting perpetrated against. It's usually some combination.
Mhm.
Um,
So right now, when we're with our partner so much,
yeah.
home or single, either way, so much of our stuff, our patterns are hitting the fan right now. So I'm sure there's a lot more fighting going on, a lot more households. Do you have any like suggestions or tips about what to do? I know my partner and I are really getting into our unhealthy patterns more and more. It's almost so difficult to unentangle when you're with the same person.
Yes, well, it is. And obviously, one of the first things I want to say is that, you know, people go get a trainer when they want to learn how to lift weights. They go to get a yoga instructor when they want to learn how to do yoga. But somehow they miraculously believe they can raise children, fall in love, have a family, get married, whatever, in whatever order you do that without any help. Thank you very much. And I think that's really a disservice to us. It's good to get help. So a counselor, therapist, relationship coach, these are nice things to have. If you've got anger issues, work on anger management with an anger coach. And I do all of those things. But let's just say, okay, you're a do-it-yourselfer.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And you're not going to get help. That's fine. So one of the things that you want to do first and foremost is take responsibility for your feelings. If you've got this attitude that other people make you feel a certain way, then you are always going to be a victim. And I want to tell you something, death row is full of victims. So taking personal responsibility for your behavior, for the words that you say, for the actions that you take, first step in becoming empowered. And then the other thing that I really want to acknowledge, because as well, regardless of how you identify, your sexual orientation, your gender, your race, your ethnicity, all those things oftentimes carry certain um, forms of prejudice, stereotype, oppression that you maybe feel like you're trying to work against or rise above. And so I think it's really important to find your voice around those things and stand for truth, stand for your truth. And at the same time, don't tip over into becoming the thing you hate. So, unfortunately, sometimes we've got like our righteous rage tips over into, and now I'm going to get even. And
Mhm.
that's what happened to me. My husband went through Men Overcoming Violence, and he became a completely nonviolent husband. And it was wonderful and beautiful. And I took it as my invitation to retaliate.
Mhm.
So, and boy, that sense of fairness,
Oh,
right, is a huge stumbling block.
yeah.
So what we want to do is have compassion for all the players and some clarity about where we want to go. And this can extend even into our political activism, which is really positive solutions. How do we lift all of us up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about your book. I want to talk about the research you've been doing for your book that's about to come out.
Yeah.
You could say the title if you'd like. But what's some of the research or interesting learnings that you have to share with our audience about that?
Absolutely. The book is called Love, Lust, and Romance in the Wake of Me Too. And we'll see what the publishers end up titling it. That's, as an author, I know I'm not always in charge of that. But one of the things that's been really fascinating for me is finding out all these ways that we have kind of codependent assumptions about our connections. So we may feel obligated. If we go back to sex, a lot of times both men and women, people of all genders, sometimes feel obligated to engage in sex they don't really want to have.
Mhm.
I've seen that female identified people do a lot of that.
Mhm.
Kind of want to please or just get it over with or check that little box. Okay, it's done now.
Mhm.
And but just to be clear, there are also male identified people who have that experience as well. And I think that it's just been really exciting for me. I'm a huge fan of the Codependent No More by Melanie Beatty, but I feel that she didn't take the topic far enough, and I ended up doing my own research and writing my own stuff about how we shift those codependent patterns towards something that we would call interdependent. Because one of the things that's really interesting about human beings is that we're pack animals. We're very social. We need each other. Um, and it's one thing to point out the codependent dysfunctional behaviors. It's quite another to say, and what do we replace that with? What do we do instead?
Mhm.
So that's been the most exciting part of this for me in a lot of ways. It's like shifting that because, and I'll tell you why. The codependency is probably an overused term. And so let me explain what I mean by that. I mean the impulse to either control or acquiesce.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, we'll do it your way. Or
Mhm.
um, let me convince you to do it my way.
Mhm.
Okay, so and this is where those power struggles they happen around money, they happen around parenting, they happen in the bedroom around sex.
Mhm.
So really, I have a chapter in my book called "How Codependency Complicates Consent."
Mhm.
So that we end up thinking, okay, well, I haven't done that thing that he really likes for a long time, so I guess I better do it now.
Mhm.
Or he did that thing that I really like, so I guess now I owe it to him to do this thing that he really likes. And oh, I just really want to free couples from that. I really do, because this is not where either one of you is going to find your erotic bliss. It really needs to be coming from a place of authenticity.
Mhm.
And so much of that is dependent on whether or not you're able to talk freely about your emotions
Mhm.
during sex. Can you talk about how you are feeling during sex? Like, could you take a time out during
Mhm.
sex?
Yeah, that's so important, and especially in your intimate relationship. I think
Yeah.
everything up to your soulmate partner is practice. I call it research. So if you're single and dating, consider it research. How well are you going about communicating, asking for your needs? A little more to the left, a little higher. Not right now. Let's talk first. Let's eye gaze for a few minutes. Whatever it is, just practice until it feels comfortable.
Well, and I would invite the viewers to go even further than that.
Yeah.
Um, because here's the thing, our sexuality is so core to us.
Mhm.
We've got a certain amount of proof
Mhm.
that the fetuses are actually being sexual inside the womb,
Mm.
sometimes to the point of orgasm. I mean, literally orgasming and falling asleep afterwards.
Mm.
I think that really highlights that our sexuality comes before our first breath of air and our first sip
Mhm.
of mother's milk or bottle, whatever you got.
Mm.
Um, and certainly before you ever walked. So if you think of it that way, it's hooked into some very important aspects of yourself. And I like to think of it as part of my spiritual journey. So um I there's no way that you're going to really get that sense of fulfillment and completion and connection that all of us crave. All of us really want this.
Yes.
And we keep trying to make it happen with a pill, a potion, or a position. We keep trying to make it happen with certain types of friction. And then we wind up still unsatisfied and still unfulfilled, and we don't know why.
Yeah.
And I really think that if you can start bringing all of your emotional um, landscape to your sexuality and opening it up to being part of your spirituality, it can
Mhm.
just really expand into something that is so fulfilling and mind blowing,
Mm.
and gets better with time.
Mm. I love that. I used to, when I was younger, I used to always, when I was dating, I was a late bloomer, by the way, but I used to always feel like I could only show certain things to this person and hide all the rest. And so my journey on falling in love was learning to take these out of the closets, out of the shadow side, and be like, this is my messy side. This is, the stuff that in the moment feels so bad and so shameful, or I used to feel like I was so ugly, like all these things. And so I used to like hide. My whole posture was like tight, like this, rigid. And so like my last 20 years was unraveling that and being like, here I am right now, and being like, here I am, all of me. And so my transition was learning to show not just the beautiful and the sexy, but like all of it. And when you take it out of the closet, and not in like a victim-y way, that was actually one transition, because I used to be a complete victim. I used to be like, oh, this is wrong with me and this is wrong with me. But when I learned to like, okay, like I was a geek. That was one of my like things I held in the closet. Nobody could know how geeky and dorky I am. I'm not going to tell anybody. I don't have friends. But when I learned to just like, you know what, come out with it, and I actually told my partner when we started dating, I'm a total geek. I want you to know that. And he just like fell in love with me more because of these parts of myself. So when you learn to own these parts and not hide them away, then that creates true intimacy. That's one secret I found.
Totally. And I have clients who have admitted to me that they're still like they've been married for 10 years and they're still trying to perform in as if they're how do I look when I'm in
Right.
this position, and well, I don't want to make too much noise and I don't want to sweat, and
Yeah.
so
Right.
you're never going to get to that bliss that reaches
Yeah.
down into the pit of your gut and takes you
Yeah.
all the way up into the heaven
Totally.
if
Totally.
you're worried about
That's
looking
what
like a porn star.
you're talking about, the internal, the spiritual. When we first meet, maybe we care about how much eyeshadow we have on and everything, but then like the truth of who you are. And this is like just like when you're with a good friend and you're just speaking pure from your heart. And it doesn't matter how ugly they are, how you look. It's just like right here. That's where you want to eventually come from, so that it doesn't matter how messy you are in that very moment. And along with that, we're also on a journey to become your highest and best self, because I feel like oftentimes when people get in, I'm always like, why do people get fat or chubby once they're in relationship? And so not necessarily, I'm not saying judge that. I'm more so saying, don't just relax and fall asleep once you have your partner. You still have to go on a continual actualization journey. Like, oh, you're doing this. And I love it when my partner's doing things that inspires me. He's getting out there, whether it's just through community and friends or through his work. And I'm like, I want to do that more. And so like right now I'm doing all these things in the world and it's inspiring him. So more so I like to see it as an evolutionary upward spiral, rather than just here we are, let's just cuddle and watch Netflix.
Oh, totally. I'm glad you brought that up because I think people look at a relationship as a destination.
Yes,
It's
I
not.
always did.
It's not a destination. It's
uh,
a journey,
yeah,
and so it's like be intentional about your journey. For me, I want to be intentional about what challenges do I want to take on, because a relationship is going to challenge you and you have a choice in that. When it inevitably challenges you, you can choose to avoid it, which is the path of acquiescence. It's kind of like whatever you want, dear.
yeah,
So right there you've basically just said, I'm not participating in this relationship anymore. I'm not showing up. I'm just along for the ride, and
mhm,
which means that the relationship gradually dies. And this is why people get bored over time. This is why
right,
their sex life goes down the toilet.
yeah,
I myself have been on a sacred sexual journey now for decades. First with my ex-husband, and sex got better every year. And
and now,
until and now I've been in this relationship for 10 years, and this sex gets better every month.
wow, how do you keep it getting better and better?
Well, okay, so one of the things that you were asking me about, how do couples when they're locked into the same house, and having all so much exposure, how do we it's so important to have an ability to take timeouts. Now,
Yeah,
if there's a conflict, you're taking a timeout, like you have to have an agreement about what a timeout is. This
we
is
are
where
king and queen of timeouts.
couples like, I did take a timeout. I slammed the door and said, fuck you. It's like, no, that's not a timeout. A A timeout is I'm taking a timeout and I've already negotiated with my partner that it's never going to go past 20 minutes or 24 hours or whatever your agreement is. And then you go spend that time trying to get in touch with what's going on with you. Okay. So, and I I understand there's opportunity for another free gift. I can give your viewers
Yes. Well, so
a
yes, right.
specific way to take a timeout. So
Okay,
the
great.
so now let's take this and apply it to sex. Okay. So you're in the throes of passion, you're making love, and your partner says or does something that triggers you. And maybe you don't even know what the trigger is. Maybe you've never encountered it before, or maybe you are familiar with it. It really doesn't matter. But you know what? All of a sudden, you're starting to numb out and leave your body, or tune out and get bored, or everything just stopped feeling good.
Mhm.
Most people will try to fake it till they make it. They're just going to try to push through that.
Mhm.
Or maybe they'll start complaining. This isn't really working for me. I need you to do
Mhm.
something else. And I was like, no, don't do that. Take a
Mhm.
time out. Just say, sweetheart, I'm having an unpleasant experience right now. I need for us to stop.
Mhm.
But when you do that, that's not the end. This is the great opportunity to get closer to each other, to really open your hearts to each other. So you want to have set some precedents with your partner to say, when I do that, let's talk about it. So what I want from you is for you to say, oh, okay, I want to hear what's going on for you, what's coming up for you right now.
But lots of times men have a hard time accessing that, right? I mean, both sex, I'm sure.
Uh, yeah, I would say it tends to be difficult for a lot of men. Um,
Uh-huh.
because they are stuck in performance mode, right?
It's stuck in their head, trying to figure
Well, performance. They're in their
out.
performance mode, which is I have to make this thing happen. And if she's not
Mhm.
happy, I've done something wrong. So immediately they might feel chastened or reprimanded or corrected or somehow or another they've messed up, and so they're going to get defensive. That's why you want to have these conversations when you're not naked and in bed. You want to just talk about that. Look, I want to set an intention for our sex life that it's a sacred sexual journey. And as a sacred sexual journey, it needs to be conscious. That means that if any time one of us, any one of us, either one of us feels triggered, distant, disengaged, it's not working, that we stop and we get connected to each other emotionally. We start talking, exploring what's going on. What am I feeling? When was the last time I felt that way? When was the first time I felt that way? So we're getting really connected to our tissues
Mhm.
through our hearts.
Mhm.
And the way that that works for me is that after we've cried or held each other, whatever it is that we needed to do in that moment, we go right back to making love. Now,
Speaking
grab,
of that, let's just hop over to you mentioned something about the erotic sexual something that you wanted to end this talk with.
yeah, yeah. I have an exercise that can help you actually move in this direction. If you
Okay.
want to have a really embodied, conscious, sacred sexual
Can I have
reality,
it right now?
huh?
Can I have it right now?
Um, it's kind of personal. So
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you about it.
Okay.
Um,
I'll
I'm
save it till later.
I'm right-handed.
Okay.
I'm right-handed. So I would say for your viewers, whichever dominant hand, left or right, you want to put that on your genitals.
Okay.
So so if it's a vulva, you're going to cup your vulva.
Okay.
If it's your penis and testicles, you'll cup both of them.
Okay.
If it's some combination of the two, cup it.
Okay.
I don't care what's down there. Just put your dominant hand down there, and we're not. It's like this. It's it's like a container.
Okay.
I'm just holding it.
All right.
Okay, and then I'm going to close my eyes,
Okay.
and I'm going to breathe. And if you want to set a timer and just give yourself like a full 5 minutes for this, that's fine. But you're going to start asking a series of questions because your yoni or your lingam wants to talk to you. There's things that they know that you don't know, that you've never stopped to ask them and listen. Listen what it is they want to tell you. And sometimes what you're going to find is that your genitals are feeling cranky towards you because maybe you agreed to things that they didn't want to do. And they were giving you some really strong messages. Maybe your penis couldn't get erect. Maybe your vulva was feeling a little bit tight and dry. Or maybe you just started to numb out, even though everything was still working. It just never took you to that sweet spot. It just got numb. And that was a message. It was a message asking you, please pay attention to me. I have things I want to tell you. But maybe you just didn't know how to listen. And now's the time. Now's the time. What do you want to tell me? Now, at this stage in my journey, my vulva is pretty much saying, she wants to, she's so voracious. She has such a voracious appetite. She wants to swallow the whole world.
I can relate to that. Mine's very energized and saying, you are a naughty girl.
You are what?
A naughty girl.
A naughty girl. Yeah. Yeah. I recently connected to a past life. And she came out and said, I am a goddess of the River Nile.
I could see that for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But mine's saying use this as your impact, to impact out into the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. At some point, if you start to feel things moving in an erotic direction, it's okay to transition into self-pleasure. And at that point, I really would invite you to not be thinking of romantic scenarios or even sexual scenarios. Actually think about the beautiful, powerful things that you came to this lifetime to accomplish.
That's like creativity.
Yes. We're actually using your creative visualization, and you want it to be there at the moment of orgasm, because this is when your brain is its most uh, um, sensitive. It's going to, those affirmations that you're practicing will have so much more oomph to them if you practice them while you're orgasming. Yeah. And then I want you to be prepared for a little bit of pain. Almost all of us have experienced something that wasn't pleasant down here. It might have been your period. It might have been an unwanted sexual touch. It might have been a sexual assault. It might have been an abortion. It might have been a painful birth experience. It might have been an embarrassing erection when you were a young man in school. Whatever it is, maybe getting caught masturbating. There's memories down here. They need you to listen to them so that they can be set free and move on. So keep a journal near your bed. Be prepared to write down what comes up. Use this as a deepening relationship with your genitals. They're not a toaster oven. We're not trying to find the right buttons to push here. We want to have an organic, fully embodied relationship, an emotional, heart-centered relationship with our genitals.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Well, it's been so exciting. Can any of you people tune into your body right now? Turn on. Okay. So in conclusion, I'd like you to share your free gift. Just
Yes,
say a sentence or two about it, and then how we could find you to work with you.
absolutely. So the free gift is the Exquisite Partnership Formula, and it contains 10,000 words. It's long, so don't let that be daunting. It's full color. It's absolutely gorgeous. It cost me an arm and a leg to produce this, and it's free to you.
Awesome.
So it has the timeout. the specific formula for taking timeouts that actually work, because a timeout should be bringing you closer together, not driving you further apart. It has a game in there called Show Me Your Movie, which is something my partner and I play all the time. It's fascinating, it's fun, and it really heals a lot of those old hurts. And then a 5-step process for asserting a very powerful no that draws people closer to you. I'm all about wanting to empower women in particular, but people of all genders, on how to have a powerful no in the context of being intimate, whether that's in a sexual moment or if it's just in a day-to-day mundane activities of your long-term relationship. There's ways in which we are afraid to say our no because we're afraid of creating a schism between us and the people we love. And so this is a feminine and very powerful assertion skill.
I
So
love it.
yeah,
It's so beautiful.
you can find me over at the Shame Free Zone.
Right.
Yep. So it's shamefreezone.com or just Google Veronica Monet Shame Free.
Perfect. Wonderful. Yes. And we just did a podcast on your YouTube channel, the Shame Free Zone, on your YouTube, right? Yay. That was so fun.
Yes, we did. And we did a live over on Facebook, and I think got over 350 viewers.
Woo, all right. That's great for a few days. Yeah. All right. It's been so lovely having you here, and I look forward to connecting more later.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thanks for everything you're doing in the world.